Good morning, everyone. I have created something really cool that I'm very excited to show you today. Let's see here. All right, so the topics for today. First, I guess you guys know what XP is, so I'm going to tell you what the Storybook is. I'm going to tell you why you want to use Storybook with XP, how to get started with this in your project, and then I'm going to do a demo in a little library that I'm working on at the moment where I've added Storybook. I'm going to show you how I'm using it. And I'm going to end with creating a new story as live coding, because that is always exciting and appealing for programmers to see someone standing up here sweating trying to live code something. So that's going to be fun. All right. Okay, Storybook. Storybook is a tool for developers. It's a Node.js tool, so you have to sort of run it on the side of Enonic in Node. And it's a tool that lets developers develop components in isolation and preview them. You get hot module reloading, so that as you are working on your template files or your CSS or your front-end JavaScript, as soon as you press save, the browser will refresh and you get a preview of what you're working on. It's often used to create a component library or like a design system documentation. I think that is like one of the most appealing parts here, so to get your components organized and documented. And there's also a bunch of extra plugins in Storybook that can help you with running some tests front end, or can do some accessibility checks for you. A whole bunch of other plugins too to help you test your creations. Okay, a story in this context, I'm probably going to use the word story a bit. So that would be a component or a template. Oh yeah, also I made components here bold. There's a reason for that. I'm going to say that now. And that is Storybook was originally built for being used with React or with Vue or Svelte or this type of front-end frameworks. In the Enonic context, when we're talking about components, we're often talking about pages or layouts or parts or some other ones. And these pages and layouts and parts, they are very well suited to be mounted in Storybook to sort of get your previews and working with them. So the component concept works really well here too. So a story is an instantiated component / template. It can be a sub-template, a part of a component too, but we'll get into that later. Which would be your HTML and your styles and your front-end JavaScript. So whatever happens back-end in your controller in Enonic, that is not something that we get to test or try here. The only thing that we're doing here now is the pure front-end stuff, your HTML and front-end CSS and JavaScript. Okay, so the new thing, the thing that we didn't have before, which I have made now, is support for Freemarker and Thymeleaf. Okay, so these are like the back-end template languages that we often use with Enonic. Thymeleaf, I guess most people working with Enonic has touched on. Freemarker is my preferred flavor. It's Tine IKT that made that, and it's a nicer template language, if you ask me. So that's my examples later will be in Freemarker, but it's the same for Thymeleaf. Oh, yeah, the Freemarker parts are tested better than the Thymeleaf ones, because I only work with Thymeleaf now and then. I usually work with Freemarker. So now you know. That's a dirty secret. Okay, yeah. Just before Easter, we got it on the Enonic market, so you can install it into your environment from here. Please don't install it in production, because that would be an attack vector. This is for development only. There are some safeguards here, some configuration that you have to do so that you won't accidentally install it in production. We're going to see if I can make it so that it will also only run when you have the development flag on or something like that. It's not like that yet, so just please don't install it in production. If you do, I take no responsibility of what happens. Okay, so now you know. Yeah, we were done there. Okay, why use Storybook with XP? So what I like is the nice and short feedback loop with hot module reloading, so that when I press save, the preview updates instantly. So I don't have to sort of move my cursor or anything out of the file that I'm working on. So I can just keep typing and pressing save, and then my preview refreshes. That's nice. Quicker code reviewing. So what you get here is, instead of having to create content to preview your components, you already have a pre-configured data object, like your model. You have that ready. So you set up a bunch of models to test different configurations for your component or different permutations of the configurations. Well, that said, you should always test the finished product too in XP before you pass the code review. But it's a nice start to get like a first overview. If you can find mistakes here and there very quickly, then you don't have to create the content at the beginning. You can sort of get a good start on your code review at least. And yeah, it's a nice tool for demoing too if you have your component library in Storybook. So it's an okay tool for that too. But I think the documentation aspect is sort of core to why I like using it. Okay, how to get started in your project. Okay, so there's the application that you install, but there's also a utility library, because you have to do this is something that you put files into your code, which are named .stories.js or .stories.ts. And I created a little utility library to be used with that, with some TypeScript types and some other stuff. But here I also documented step by step everything you have to do to get this into your project. So this is where you want to start to get it set up. We're not going to do that in detail now, just now you know. Okay, yeah, now comes the fun part. It's the demo live coding part. Yeah, let's just close this here. So I'm starting Storybook with npm run Storybook because I installed it in my project. Okay, so here I have a project. This is a library that I created. There are some things I've called blocks here. The blocks are, in my code now, mix-ins, where that I can use other places, and I have some configuration here. It's a title and there's some items that will become my accordion. Yeah, what's called disclosures there. And I put a bunch of other files together with a mix in there. This is not the normal way that you do it probably, but I like putting all my files together that belong together. I have a template that will render sort of the output of that. And my template here is just, it takes in some classes that it will add on the top level, and it takes in some items. That is the object that it will iterate over their items as item, and it will output a title and some text. And that is what creates these accordions. Okay, so the story here. Let's open the story. Is it this one? This one. Okay, so in my blocks accordion stories.ts file, I have some configuration for all of the stories in this file. And down here, this is the story itself. It's of type story object, and it takes in just, here's the same shape as what I would send in as the model in my XP controller. So this is what I sent into my render function to render this, the template file. And it has this classes string, and it has an array, which is items, which has the fields it wants to iterate over. So if I change something here, like the title of the first accordion, and I press save, yeah, it just updates instantly on the side. I can also change my file, and it will also follow, if I do imports of partial templates, it will follow that dependency tree. So I can change something that has been imported by one template, like from other files, and it will also automatically catch that and do a refresh as I change something in the dependency tree. So it will follow the dependency tree of the templates too, which is pretty cool. So I can add something and instant updates as I press save. Okay, so that is my accordion. I also have a component that I call a fact box, which I haven't created a story for yet. So I want to do that. I want to create a story for my fact box. So what I do, I add a new file, give it a name. And as soon as I added it, I get an error because this file is empty and it doesn't really know what to do with this empty file that it tries to import. So I need to export something for it to not be angry anymore. So I need to export a default something, which is the configuration for all the stories here. I want it to have a title, and the title is going to be blocks and not accordion. No, it's going to be factbox. Okay, now it's not completely angry, but we don't see a story yet either. So I need to add the story too. So I'm going to export it's almost correct, but not quite. So I like my TypeScript types.
Sorry, can you increase the fonts, please?
I can try to increase the fonts. Let's try that. Thank you for telling me. I can. Yes, very good. And let's just take this away so that we get a little bit more space here. Okay, I save. And now I created my first story here. And you can see Factbox popped up here. And for some reasons, it's not updating on this side. All right. Yeah, it's still a little bit angry because it doesn't know what it wants to preview. So let's add that. We need to configure the server. So Storybook comes with a flavor, which is the Storybook server flavor, which is the one that we use together with the XP-application. So they talk to each other. So I need to add my parameters, and it wants a server, and it wants an ID. So the ID is the path to the file from my resources folder in my project. So I'm going to just get this ID by doing an import of my FTL file. Is that not right? That's not accordion. So, okay, good, very good. So this is a little bit strange syntax, isn't it? It's I'm doing a import from an FTL file. How the heck does it know to import that? And that is because there are a few custom loaders for Freemarker and for Thymeleaf. These are Webpack loaders that will do the whole following the dependency graph that I told you about, but it will also return the ID, which is the path to the file. And now the server got the ID, so it knows which file it wants to use to preview. And now I'm getting some different error messages here. And these error messages are from my template. And that is because, of course, I'm not passing in any data to it yet. So that's why it's angry. So let's do that. Let's fix that. So to create my story, I pass in some args here. And it comes with a few suggestions, but let's see what I can do instead of myself. Let's do the text first. No, let's not do the text first. Let's do the title first, since that's what it's angry about first. Hello, Factbox. Okay, I got my story, and let's do the. Okay, I press save, and it's still angry. And that is because, of course, there's a bug in my template. So I need to fix that bug. So this is the part of the demo where I pretend there's a bug in my template. Yes, I'd named this body. It should be named text, as I also had put up here in the comment. So I've changed this to text. Yes, there you have my preview of my Factbox. As you see, this doesn't look very fact boxy. It's just, it's just a title and some text. And that is probably because I haven't added any CSS to it yet. So in my story, I also want to import my CSS. OK, and now it looks, it got some padding at least. And I want to fix my CSS because that's also wrong, of course. And the AI comes with some suggestions. And voila, we have something that looks a lot more fact boxy now. And you can see as I'm changing the code and it's updating automatically how quickly it is for me to just sort of try things out. And I get the preview instantly. And you can also change the controllers down here at the bottom of my story to help the other developers or users. As part of the documentation, what are the legal values I can use? So let's try to do that too. So for my args, I can also define some arg types, which are that's the way for me to change the input controllers down here. And I created a reusable input controller here that I use for theming my components. So I have some classes that revolve around themes. Like you see, the class here is theme accent. It's the blue color. So now I get some radio buttons here instead, and I can switch and try the different legal values for those fields. And those are also sort of in a way reflected in my XML files for doing the input in XP when I want them to, my editors to be able to configure this. So there's a little bit of a link between the controllers down here and the ones in XP. The difference is, though, that the shape of my controllers here is the shape of the input for my template, right? So don't confuse what you have down here with what comes from the XML files. Those are not one-to-one. This is a representation of the input for my template, because that's the only thing that I'm testing here is the template. Yes. I think I'm going to show you one last thing, and that is there's a part also coming with this. So the other templates, the things I've shown you so far, has been more freestanding templates that's sort of being used to build up the. This is an actual part, and what I wanted to show you is this part here. Okay, I'm going to make it bigger again. Okay, so like in the other one, I configure the server, I pass in the ID, but I can also pass in some parameters here. And here I'm passing in a template. So instead of using a file to create my HTML, I'm using an inline template here to do it. And sometimes, let's say you want to test a partial template, or you need to wrap whatever you're doing in something else, then passing in a template and using the Freemarker or Thymeleaf syntax here, like the inline template, then you can import the other template files and include them, or use them inside this. So this is a very powerful concept when you want to test partial templates specifically. So that's what I'm doing here. So I can, if I just change the input here a bit. Yeah, you can see here's it's just the inline template being passed in, and it can include other things. So I think with this toolkit, we cover sort of all of the types of templates that I use in my projects. I've not really hit on anything now that I can't test here with this. I'm not going to show this to you, but when you have like a layout, you can also use the same syntax as in XP to build out like parts inside your layout. So you can for like our company web page, I created a whole article page. It's a page on the outermost layer. I have a layout, and inside them I have parts, and all of these are rendered as one preview in Storybook. And I can import the configurations for, like, I have a header part which has its own story, but I can import that story and use those values again in my whole page story. So it's as you start working with this, you find some different tricks, and it's really cool to be able to see everything together here too, and it's very quick to develop, and you get your documentation in place. So yeah, that is what I wanted to show you today, and I hope that a lot of you will try this out. If you're doing server rendered XP, if you're doing headless, then you can probably already use Storybook with whatever front-end framework you're using already. So this is not for you. This is for old school people like me, server rendering your stuff.
Any questions? I have a couple. What is that ensures the code reloaded in Storybook itself, or do you have some other plugin that makes sure that?
No, so mainly it's Storybook itself. What you have in addition is these extra Webpack loaders that is able to sort of just import the FTL files for Freemarker or the HTML files for Thymeleaf and follow those dependency graphs. That is what you sort of get in there. What I could do, I could not import this and just hardcode a string as ID here too to point to that file. But by doing that import, it will become part of the dependency graph, and then you get hot module reloading through that.
What about if you change CSS in the Storybook that picks up the changes, or?
Yes. Yeah. So like here, the CSS is imported directly in this file. Yeah, and so that's where we create that connection. I also have, like, in my assets folder, I will have like a higher level of CSS that points to all the other files and builds one bundle. But as I don't want everything included as I'm doing the Storybook here. I want sort of the more pinpointed, and I have some common type. You get, when you're doing Storybook, you get your preview. Here's the configurations in the .storybook folder. And here I also have some common styles that will be applied to all my stories. I can import them here, and then more exact imports in each story.
Okay. And for the styling, have you come up with your own styling, or are you using Storybook's?
No, so everything in the middle here is my own. The sidebars and everything, that's Storybook, but it's like an iframe in the middle here, showing what only the styles that I add to it, and the front-end JavaScript that I add to it.
Yeah. Yes. Any more questions? Yes, in the back.
The main question is, Storybook is mostly for development usage, and you have these stories.ts files.
Yeah.
They're getting scattered all over the project, all over your file structure. Is it configurable to move it somewhere, maybe for another repo?
Yeah, very good question. So yeah, I like to have my stories.ts files together with the component that they're testing, but that's my taste, you know. You could potentially also put it into, like, a separate repo, as long as you're able to sort of get the references to the correct files. And I've thought about that, because if you don't have, let's say, permission to add it to a repo, but you want to use this to help you in your development, that would be possible, yes. So you don't have to put them there. You can put them wherever you want, or in a different folder, or wherever. It will just, Storybook will just check for all the files that has stories.ts, and it will use them to create the list of stories. That reminds me of another little bit of a catch that you have to be aware of, is that you can't uncritically share files between your XP environment and your Storybook environment, right? Because in XP, you're running on Nashorn, and if you start including a bunch of things from NPM, you probably will get errors because or you have to polyfill it. And the other way, if you're doing things in Storybook, it won't understand the paths that goes to XP libraries. So the only thing that I'm sharing here is my TypeScript types, or if I create some utility class that can be used in both environments, then I can do that if it doesn't have any dependencies. But otherwise, I don't want to share the sort of the controller backend-ish code. Those are separate environments. You have to. Storybook is only for helping you preview your template and CSS and front-end JS. So it's not a replacement, or you can't think of them as a full environment.
Yeah, very good. I have one person as well. So the app you made that you installed to XP, it exposes the ability to actually run and execute the templates, right? So when you preview, it's actually doing a round trip to XP, getting the marker back and using it.
Exactly. So the XP app, it exposes one service, and that service takes the ID, which is sort of the path to the file, and as query parameters, it gets your model, and it just renders out the HTML from that and returns it. And there's a bit of, let's say, magic inside it too, to sort of unpack, or JSON object has to be stringified to be sent as query parameters. So it has to sort of unwrap that, make it back into JSON. There's a bit of fancy functionality here too. I haven't shown you yet, but I like to use Java time, zoned date time objects in my templates, and pass in that whole thing, and my template will use either Thymeleaf or Freemarker code to render out the string from that. And so there is some functionality here too to deserialize like date inputs server side, as in the XP application, to that Java object shape to be able to use that. So there is, all of this is documented, of course, but there is a few times I want to use Java types, and there are possibilities to do that.